have here. So let me see if this works here. Okay. Okay. This actually is a presentation I did to my ULI council in 2008, April of 2008. And I thought at that point we had actually been through the downturn, little knowing that 4 months later you'd have Lehman and all that stuff happening. But here are my 10 lessons learned, and a lot of them cross over. So this is the first one. Know which business you're in and capitalize for it. Are you a developer? Are you a builder? Are you an entitler? And those of you who do multiple kinds of things, Doug, you do, Tim, you're doing it. Each one of them requires a different capital structure. That if you're doing the land business, you better have a lot of equity. But a builder, you can have a reasonable amount of debt because you're spinning your inventory relatively fast. But this whole thing of what business are we in? Are we capitalized correctly for it is a great question to ask. This is the corollary to this. Any of you ever knew a guy named Isaac Heimbeiner? You can buy more land in an afternoon than you can get rid of in a lifetime. Dennis, you've probably seen that one before.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And again, this whole thing of in an uptime, having land, plenty of land is great, but in a downtime, it can actually take you down. So that's one. Let's see here, number 3. Just because you can borrow or lend money doesn't mean you should. Okay, most of the destructive boom busts have been driven by new money coming into the asset class without fully understanding the risk profile. I'm thinking here, build for rent. Tons of money sitting there coming in. Could all of that build for rent stuff going up be the big chunk of spec inventory that is sitting out there? I don't know. But be careful when the spigots begin to open too much. And I said again, so when I look at the stuff, I think, is build for rent the next spot where we got to watch? This is one that you really got to focus on. You can't cut too deep too fast. When things start going south, whether it's cutting people, spending, production, prices, house size, hard decisions have to be made, and they're oftentimes personal. And, you know, I went back, and this was in 2008. What would you have done looking in retrospect in 2005, 2006? Aaron, you asked the question of lessons in stagflation. It is this whole thing of holding on too long was the thing that got people in trouble. You can't cut too deep too fast. Okay, several of you mentioned this. Cash is king, but what does it mean in terms of what you do differently? You're managing cash flow, not the income statement, as part of your regular routine. And when I say regular routine, it is weekly reviewing it, have a 13-week rolling cash flow that you review with your CFO or controller every week, and you update it 6 weeks in, going out another 13. You're managing your cash tightly, knowing your receivables, knowing your payables, being inclusive in cash projections. This whole thing, share the pain with vendors sooner rather than later. I think Bill Rectanis, you were talking about that. Always keep a reserve. Then going back to before, cut spending fast and very tight controls. I went down in the tough times on VPOs as a division president at the time. I was doing any VPO over $100, where normally I'd only look at it if it was 5,000. I was very tight on the controls. So this is the corollary to it. Know your numbers. Know your P&L, know your cash, know your margins, know your market comps, know your margins, know your spec limits, know where you break even, know where you are in the cycle. Know historic relationships. And Remember Mark Bowd? Dennis, you probably dealt with him for a while, didn't you?
No.
Long ago. I mean, just no good predictor indices. So this is really getting yourself into indicators and knowing them. This find reality and deal with it fast. Okay, we talked about communicate reality to your employees. The next one is really important. Have a bias toward action. When in doubt, act. Let the banks and investors know what your strategy is frequently and in writing. Again, communicating. Figure out who the elephants are and micromanage them. Who might take you down, and are you keeping tight to them? If it's a bank, if it's an investor, it's a subcontractor, know it. And this hard in your face reality is better than rumor any day. Figure out who you want in the foxhole with you ahead and cut to that core quickly. So this is really, I think we've covered this. Who do you want in the room with you? Whether it's the salespeople that Dennis was talking about, whether it's your operating people, know who you want there. This is, many of you heard this expression, in God we trust, all others bring data. Have a strong bias to acting based on data. And I think some of you said strong processes give better results faster and reality faster. So focus on processes. Another one, don't be afraid to change your organization. I have this phrase, organizations tend to do the things they're organized to do. And what needs to be done in a downturn is different than in an upturn or a steady state. Somebody who may be your strong purchasing person might be better someplace else or vice versa. And it's always finding the current bottleneck or opportunity and organize around it. Cycle time, closing out jobs, market comps, sitting inventory, bank investor relationships. Who owns those things? And it may be somebody who is junior in the organization that has to handle this stuff. You may have someone whose job is to constantly look at sitting inventory. It may be a couple times a week to make sure it hasn't become a supply dump, that it looks great. Do your salespeople looking to make sure there are no burned out light bulbs in your model homes? I mean, all of that detail, who do you hold responsible for it? We covered this one, so I'm glad to see many of you have. Focus on sales management and value enhancement. I love this first one. Shy salespeople have skinny kids. So no sell, no eat. Put senior managers in the field to both evaluate and help sell. You know what? If sales is your problem, are you out there on the weekends seeing who's coming in, actually helping sell alongside of your salespeople, learning what they're doing and getting comfort where they're in non-comfort? Right now, the difference between survivors and Walking Dead is whether they are competent salespeople out there all the time. I think, Dennis, this was you talking about it. We talked about landscape enhancements, front and rear yards. Actually, a great idea here, Glenna. I would, in slow times, in the spring and the fall, run a neighborhood landscape contest. I would set up the local garden club as the judge. Everybody who chose to enter, I did a deal with a landscape nursery, and they got like $100 worth of petunias or whatever, mums in the fall, whatever, and gave them like 4 weeks to spruce up their property and had the judging going on. First prize was like landscape maintenance for a year. Second prize was, $500 worth of bushes, whatever. But what you wanted is your entire community actually sprucing itself up. It may cost you 5 or 10 grand, but that's cheap compared to a community that is looking very active, alive, and using the peer pressure of neighbors. So landscape. We talked about value enhancement rather than cutting price. We talked about, do you mortgages? Do you pay your electric bill? Whatever. Measuring conversion rates And the other one is, I think I've talked in the past about the 7 Ps of marketing. Bill Rectanis has had this drilled into him. Remember him, Bill?
Oh, yeah.
When you're in doubt, compare yourself to your competition on the basis of product, price, place, promotion, people, process, and presentation. So if you use that checklist and how are you doing, find out where you're weak. That's a way to help make sure you're on the top of your game. And this was the final thing. The old rules will probably not apply because there are no rules. You'll get resegmentation. The capital will be different coming in. I think for a while, business will be smaller and more demographically diverse. I think we talked, Jen, I think this is you, the best operators will prevail for a while, then it will shift again. And if you look at the bottom, there will be another round of lessons when these are forgotten, when the money comes back and we do it all over again. Be wise when it happens again in about 10 to 15 years. So I did this in the spring of 2008. What's 8 plus 15? 23. So right inside of that bracket, and here we go again. Thoughts? After we go through this, what's resonating with you?
Can you share it?
Yeah, how do I do that? Let's see here. How do I do that? I guess I do here.
I think going back to